Hi everyone, I am Federico, and as you may see from the screen, I am part of Personix and also recently graduated from the Master of Engineering Management here at Hopkins. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience as a co-founder and CTO of Personix, and also maybe teach you something new about how to talk to customers, how to extract better insights from your conversations, and build better products. So to start with Personix and give you a little more context of my experience, we started Personix in January 2021 with a group of friends from the same master. And then we joined to the business plan competition and FastForward Fuel Accelerator. We won the business plan competition and graduated from FastForward, then to dedicate almost our entire summer for development and getting traction in our product. And we recently won the Amazon AWS College competition that gave us a lot of traction and a lot of exposure. And now we are in conversation to sell our technology. But to explain a little bit what Personix actually does is whenever you have an idea, you start talking to customer, right? Try to start talking to people to see if this idea, if the solution that you have actually makes sense for this customer segment. So something that we noticed from our previous projects was that people were spending more time analyzing interviews than even performing those interviews. So Personix is a tool that uses machine learning and natural language processing to analyze those recordings of your conversation and automatically extract insights like customer pain points, customer motivations. So Personix helps you to analyze the conversations. And we create the technology, but immediately when we start using the technology with our own customer research and with real customers, we realize that, okay, we're making the analysis faster, more accurate, but there's nothing you can do in the analysis stage if the interview and the preparation were already biased. So at that moment was where we decided to pivot our roadmap, because initially our idea was to move forward in the product development cycle after analysis, help people to prioritize features. But once we noticed this, we decided to move backwards and try to help people prepare themselves better and be better interviewers. Once we decide that as a team, we start improving ourselves and joining workshops, reading books, practicing with each other to be better interviewers. And that's how we become better interviewers. And most of my presentation is based on that experience. So today I will talk to you more about how to talk to customers, because talking to customers is actually really hard and nobody tells you that. We all know we should be talking to customers and we even talk to customers, but even so, we keep building stuff nobody wants. So I will not try to convince you that you should be talking to the customer, you should be doing discovery, because I will assume that you already know that. As an entrepreneur, we know that we should be talking to the customer. But instead of that, I will try to give you some practical do's and don'ts that you can directly apply to your next conversation. So going to the practical part, how do you prepare for your next conversation? What you should do even before start talking to people. So the first one is to define your goals. And for discovery research, your goals are the assumptions that you want to test. So ask yourself and with your team this question. What are the 3 assumptions that if wrong can greatly jeopardize your startup? Or frame it in another way is, imagine your startup failed 6 months from now. What could have been the reasons for that failure? And try to test those things right now. So we all have assumptions when we have a new idea, when we have a new solution. And to give you an example of our assumption for Personix was that product teams spend a considerable amount of time analyzing interviews. This was one of our main assumptions, because basically if product teams were not analyzing the interviews, they were just bypassing the analysis part, they were analyzing and performing the interviews and then go directly to prototyping or development, Personix was useless, right? So this was our main assumption. So before even start talking to people, think about the assumptions that you have right now, and those are your main things that you want to test when talking to people. The assumptions are your goals. Okay, now you prepare for your conversation, you have your assumptions. Now, what should I do during the interview? And there are three basic rules. The first rule is talk about their life instead of your idea. And this sounds very simple, but as an entrepreneur, every time we want to pitch our solution, especially when we're talking to a customer and they mention the pain point that we are attacking with our solution. So we want to stop the conversation and say, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about anymore. I have your solution, and we start pitching mode. So we need to constrain ourselves and try not to do that, because a conversation with a customer is only useful if you're getting facts from the customer. And the only way to get that is talking about their life. It has nothing to do with your idea. Most of the time, the customer may ask you, hey, tell me what you're working on. Tell me about your idea. Explain me a little bit about what you're doing. So if you met with a curious customer, the phrase that I use is, let me explain you about my idea at the end of the conversation, so I don't bias your answers before that. So, and most of the time the customer will be fine with that. So talk about their life instead of your idea. And if you can avoid talking about your idea, do it at the end of the conversation. The second rule is ask about specifics in the past instead of genetics or opinions about the future. And this is very simple. Try to avoid questions about, like, would you use this? Or what will happen if this happens? Try to ask questions related to the past so you can get facts from the customer. Talk me about the last time this happened, or how much did you pay for this? Or when this happens in the past, what did you do? Every time about the past and not about the future. That's the second rule. And the third rule is talk less and listen more. And again, very simple. And one rule of thumb that you can apply, and it will directly improve your performance in this area, is always ask open-ended questions and avoid yes/no questions. Again, always open-ended questions, and that will directly improve your performance for this role. So to summarize this, we have talk about your life instead of your idea, always about the past, not about the future, and talk less and listen more. Those are the things that we should be doing during an interview. Now, what should I don't do during an interview? And these are the three types of data that we should be avoiding. The first one are compliments. We all want to receive compliments. It feels really nice, but they're most of the time lying. So there's no value that we get by receiving compliments. And we need to be aware of this so we can avoid taking these compliments and make decisions based on these compliments. So one of the things, these are some symptoms that you can notice during the meeting to try to notice that this conversation is not going to the right direction, and try to steer the conversation back to getting facts from the customer. So if you start saying thanks, or I'm glad you like it, many times during a conversation, it's pretty sure that conversation is not going well, it's not doing to the right direction. And maybe the only 2 times that you should be saying thanks to your customer during a customer research conversation is at the beginning, thank you for being here, and at the end, thank you for your time, and that's it. I'm glad you like it. We all know we shouldn't be even showing our product, but yeah, sometimes we do. And second symptoms are when you're after the meeting, you go with your team, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with one of these, or more than one of these phrases. That meeting went really well. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. Everyone I talk loves our idea. These are terrible feedback that you can get to your team, because making decisions based on these compliments can make catastrophic consequences for your team. So what you should do with compliments is just ignore them and try to steer the conversation back to getting facts from their life. First type of data that should be avoiding compliments. The second one are fluff. And you have generic claims that are I usually, I always, I never, hypothetical maybes, I will, future tense promises, I might, I could. And these are very related to the second rule, if we remember, is about asking about the past and not about the future. If we ask about the future, most of the time, I can say 99% of the time, we're gonna get fluff. So taking into account that second rule, we can avoid this data. And we have the deadly fluff, and I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with this, is you show your product and they immediately say, I will definitely buy this, but they never do. So be aware of this. Don't make decisions based on fluff. Try to avoid them. The third one are ideas. This is kind of different from the previous two, because you don't need to avoid or ignore the ideas, but don't write down the idea itself. If you hear someone mentioning, let's say, hey, can you integrate this with Microsoft Excel? You shouldn't be taking note of integrated with Microsoft Excel. Instead of that, we should be trying to get deeper into that idea and understand what are the motivations behind that request. Like, tell me, and why do you want it to be integrated with Excel? How you will use it? So, because a good phrase in this scenario is, the customer is the owner of the problem, but you're the owner of the solution. So most of the time that if you understand the motivation, you'll probably came up with a better solution than the customer does. So try to understand the motivation of the idea, not just the idea. These are the three types of data that you should be avoiding. First, compliments, second, fluff, and third, ideas without motivation. So this is a short exercise to fix what we have learned so far. Bad or good question. Basically, I will show you a question and you try to guess if it is good or bad question. The first one, will you buy a product with the X? As we know, will you buy a product? It's asking about genetics in the future, not about facts in the past. So we know this is a bad type of question. The second one, talk me through the last time that happened. This one is perfect. You're trying to transport the customer to some scenario in the past, so it's good. You're getting facts from the customer. And how much will you pay for X? This one is kind of tricky because we're asking for a specific number, but that doesn't change anything. We're still asking for a fluff. How much will you pay doesn't mean that they will actually pay for it. So this is a bad question. And if you're looking for some information that you can use to make some pricing decision, instead of asking this, how much will you pay? Maybe a better way to ask it could be, how much did you pay for a similar product in the past? Or how much time did you spend trying to solve this problem now that you don't have the solution? And then try to transform that time into some monetary value. Next one, how are you dealing with the now? And this is kind of tricky because it doesn't feel like you're asking about the past. But to be honest, when you're asking with it now, you're not asking exactly at this moment when you're having the interview. You're asking about the past, so it's good. What they are doing right now, or with what they have been doing to deal with this problem. So this is a good type of question. Now, I have one bonus tip for you, and is we've seen what are the things that we should be doing, what are the things that we should be avoiding. Now, how to avoid the startup friend zone. And the startup friend zone is that customer is always happy to to see your product, is always happy to give you compliments, to send you nice emails, to have another meeting, but that conversation is not going anywhere. You're wasting your time, he's wasting his time, and nobody's winning. So that's the start of friend zone, and how to avoid it is pretty simple. It's by asking for commitment. So asking for commitment after a conversation and getting a no shouldn't be considered a failure, but not asking for something at the end of after receiving a compliment, that should be considered a failure, because there's no way you can actually trust that compliment if you're not getting any sort of commitment from the customer. And there are many types of commitment. One of the first mistake I found when someone mentioned commitment is that we only think about the financial commitment. And our immediate response to that is, my product is not at that stage yet, I cannot ask for a financial commitment. Maybe that's right. But financial commitment is not the only type of commitment. And I will show you some other options that you have, and you can apply to any stage of your product. The first one is time commitments. And these type of commitments are ordered based on the level of effort from the customer. So the first one, and the most easy to get, is time commitment. After you have, for example, after you have a good customer research interview, try to set and schedule a next interview in a month. But this time you have a clear goal of showing your prototype, and they will use your prototype, and you will get feedback from them. So that's already a time commitment. And because you have clear goals for the next meeting, or using your product for a non-trivial period, that means they will not send the link and they will just create a profile. No, they need to, if they agree on using your product for 1 week, for 2 weeks, that actually means that your product provides some value and they're actually interested in your product. So time commitment is the first one. The second one is reputation risk commitment. This is, for me, my favorite, because you can apply to any stage of your product. Excuse me. And the first, introducing to a peer or introducing to a boss. That's a great sign of true commitment, because they will not risk your reputation for a product they don't actually believe on. So if they introduce, at the end of the conversation, you can ask something like, hey, do you know someone else that I should be talking with? Hey, this conversation was really useful. Do you know someone in the same field that I should be talking with? Or if they recommend you to their boss, that's already a big win there. So reputation commitment, you can ask this at the end of any type of conversation, and especially after a compliment. And the last one is also a good one, giving a public testimonial, or this could in real life, this could look like something, hey, can I use these use case or for a marketing material? If they agree on that, that's already a type of reputation commitment. The last one is the most obvious one. We all know about the financial commitments. Probably our product needs to be a little more advanced to get this kind of commitment, where we can ask a letter of intent, a pre-order, or a deposit. So escape from the start of friend zone by asking for commitment, and don't be afraid of getting no's. So to summarize this workshop, we have what should be doing during the interview. We should be talking about their life and not about our idea. We should be talking about their past and not about the future. And we should be talking less and listen more. Things that we should be avoiding, compliments. It's more about how to manage these things. Like, try to be aware when you're receiving compliments. Try to ignore fluff, and try to ignore or try to get the motivation behind ideas, not just ideas. And finally, avoid the start of friend zone by asking for commitment. And remember, you have different types of commitments. There's never a stage where you cannot ask for a commitment. Thank you so much for your time. And you really gonna want to be a master in talking to customers, I recommend you this book, The Mom Test. Most of this presentation was based on this book, and for me, it's the best book out there that gives you practical do's and don'ts that you can apply when you're talking to customers. Thank you very much.